Hello everybody, I hope you're having a good day here at the show. My name is Louise Goodman and I'm going to be moderating this next panel, which our topic here is sponsorship and media engagement. And I'm delighted to be joined here, fresh from the track in fact, by British Touring Car Championship driver Tom Oliphant and JESS SHANAHAN from Racing Mentor. Before we get going, I'd just be interested to find out from the people who are sitting down here in the audience, how many of you are drivers? We have a few drivers out there. Any of you from championships? Yep, a few championship people around here as well. Anybody looking to start racing? Is anybody at the beginning of their motorsport career? So, okay, so we've got a few people from various different areas of motorsport. So, as I mentioned, this panel is on sponsorship and media engagement, so a topic really that's going to be relevant to all of you. We are each going to make a short presentation and then we'll be opening the floor up to any questions that you'd like to ask us. As you can probably guess, my area is going to be on media engagement. So I've been working as a journalist in motorsport for many years now. I actually started out just over the road here actually as the head of communications for Jordan Grand Prix, then started working with ITV, first of all as part of their Formula One team, and now cover the British Touring Car Championship for them. Alongside that, I've also been running my own media training company, Goodman Media, so working with drivers, everybody from young karters to some of the Formula One drivers and teams, helping them understand how the media work and how they can work better with the media. JESS SHANAHAN is the founder of Racing Mentor, which provides coaching and training to drivers, teams, and businesses across motorsport. She's probably best known for her book, Get Paid to Race, which launched here at MotorsportDays Live 12 months ago. It's now being called the Sponsorship Bible by racing drivers all around the world. It's sold very well. The book, alongside the courses and the coaching that JESS provides, helps drivers learn the business skills that they need to secure sponsorship and take their racing up to the next level. And we're going to be hearing, first of all, from Tom Oliphant, a driver whose name will be familiar to all of you who cover the British Touring Car, or follow the British Touring Car Championship. Tom's been racing with Team BMW in this series this year. He's also the founder of Next Level Motorsport, which is now a leading motorsport marketing and PR business, working with drivers, teams, and manufacturers here in the UK, but across Europe as well. So Tom has made his way up to the top of British motorsport by securing sponsorship from some of Britain and Europe's leading brands. So, and he's now using that knowledge to help a lot of other drivers turn their hobby into a business for them as well. So to tell us more about that, please welcome to the stage Tom Oliphant.
Where's the clicker? Oh, there. So thank you all for coming. Yes, so I'm on here on behalf of Next Level Motorsport. First of all, I wanted to ask you all a question. If you read through here, driver one, okay, he approaches sponsorship by sending out blanket generic emails to lots and lots of websites, lots and lots of emails he found on websites. He focuses on his historic success and his career ambitions moving forward. He asks for help as a talented driver to realize his ambitions, and he creates GoFundMe pages in terms of getting him on the grid. Driver two targets specific individuals within companies with a business proposal, focuses on what they can receive from their investment and how he can benefit them, asks for business, what are you trying to achieve and how can I help you, and creates a bespoke solution to match the business requirements. Just quickly, who believes you would sponsor driver one? And who would sponsor driver two? Exactly. So sadly, there's more driver ones in the paddock these days than there are driver twos, and that's what I'm here to try and change. There's three focus areas I always tell drivers when they're starting their business motorsport search. Is first of all, understanding why a business would be interested in sponsoring you. I put brand awareness at the top, mainly because that's the first thing people say to me. However, it's probably the least important. You've got to look at how you're going to activate that investment for them, and there's some options down there. The second is know your product. Okay, everybody in motorsport's got a product. It's just like selling a TV in Curry's PC world. You know, you've got VIP tickets, TV coverage, you've got your social media, your audience influence. Those are all things that you can monetize. And if you think about it as a business, then you can turn each of those into something you can bring budget for. The final thing is to have a procedure. Okay, this is the procedure that I've worked out through my experience and through talking with experts in the field. The main thing is get your research right. Okay, if you target the wrong companies and give them the wrong information, you'll lose them very, very quickly. But if you have a procedure like this, it gives you a platform to work on, and you can then monitor how successful each area is. The key marketing materials you'll need in business: first of all, an effective website. By effective, I don't mean a career history and a bio page. I mean a business proposition. If you all Google me, then you'll find my website, and you'll find that it's all aimed at the business side. You can search through to find out more about me, but you have to click through, okay? People that want to find out about you will go to your social media and not your website first. The second thing is a sponsorship prospectus, a marketing proposal, whatever you like to call it, okay? Now, this is mine from this year, okay? In the 8 pages I have one paragraph regarding me, and that is literally just to introduce it, okay? It's all about the business benefits, it's all about what you can achieve, it's about the locations we cover, it's about the TV audience and the statistics. It gives them everything they need to know to make an informed decision whether they want to meet with me. Third thing is a marketing presentation, okay? When I go to a meeting, I hand them a business card, I hand them my prospectus, I'm giving them a presentation, okay? Everything matches, everything's branded, everything comes across professional, okay? This just gives you a lot more credibility when you're asking for money at the end of the day. And then finally, your social media, okay? Most of you will have social media of some sort, but you've got to create this into a product. You've got to publicize your motorsport career, the good and the bad. All of my best reach posts always come from negative things that I've experienced and me giving an honest reaction. Louise will tell you exactly the same thing in your media. You always have to be open and honest. The same is on social media. If you create it around your racing, you can create a product. Influencers are a large proportion of what we do. We have a voice, and it's how we use it. My main tips: focus on the business of motorsport now. Okay, you can never start too early. Okay, these deals can sometimes take up to 18 months. It's up to you to start the process as early as possible. Sell a business model, not your hopes and dreams. In the politest way possible, nobody cares about where you want to get to. Okay, they care about the business side first. Once they get to know you, I'm sure they'll get behind you and get emotional about it. But to start with, focus on the business. And then decide on the areas you want to focus on. If you're not an expert in creating a sponsorship prospectus, or if you're not an expert in creating a website, that's not a problem. There's plenty of people in the industry to help you. Just focus on the areas you are good at to maximize that. And then finally, get creative. Okay? There's many ways of getting in touch with people. It's not just about getting in touch on LinkedIn or via email. You know, go to them in person, walk around these sort of events, networking events, okay, and stand out from the crowd. So that's it from me. I believe I'll hand you back to Louise, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Tom. So I'm going to be looking at some ways that you can increase your media exposure so that you can promote yourself effectively and you know, make your interaction with the media and with fans as well a more productive experience. But first of all, let's have a look at why it matters. Why do the media matter? I think it's important for every successful racing driver to have a good relationship with the media, to understand how the media work and to work well with the media. And the higher up the ladder, the more important that gets, because the chances are the higher up the ladder you are, the more exposure your championship is going to be getting, and the more exposure your racing is going to be getting. But you might say, well, I'm just doing this for a bit of fun. I'm not intending to make a career out of racing. But it's still important to you because, as we all know too well, motorsport is an expensive business. And unless you happen to have very deep pockets, chances are you're going to be needing to find some sponsors to help you go racing. And those sponsors are going to want some kind of return on their investment. They're going to be wanting to get something out of it as well. And very often, media exposure to the public will be part of what your sponsors want to get back. And let's not forget the fans as well. You know, even if you're just racing for a hobby, surely you'd like the fans who are listening to the commentators at the track, you want to make sure that what they're hearing about you is what you want them to be hearing, that you're sort of getting across the stories that you want to get across to them. So being able to work well with the media is going to help you do all of those things. So how do you go about getting media exposure? I think the first thing to say is you need to have a story. I'm not coming to speak to a driver just to pass the time of day and have a chat with them. As a journalist, I'm coming to you because I'm covering a story. So you need to have a story to get across to me. You need to have a story that you're going to sell into me. You know, it may be obviously winning a race, qualifying on pole position, that's always going to be a story, but it doesn't just have to be a good news story. As Tom was saying, sometimes it's the bad news that gets you exposure. So if you've had a big crash in a race, that's a story as well. You know, finishing 10th in a race is not necessarily a story unless you were leading the race and, you know, had a big coming together with somebody with 1 lap to go and fell back down to 10th place, or even if you started at the back of the grid and you've made your way up to 10th place, then 10th place is a story. But just expecting me to come and give you coverage just because you happen to be on the grid, that's not going to happen. It doesn't always have to be racing related, though. It may well be that, I don't know, you've just given birth to your first child, you've just passed all of your GCSEs. There are a whole range of different stories that you can come up with. You know, and at the moment, if you think about it, the big Children in Need event is happening soon. You know, if you can relate yourself to that, that's going to be a story as well. So first of all, you've got to think about what the story is, because you're not going to get coverage if you haven't got a story. And then, of course, you need to think about how you can communicate that story to people. So you've got to start building relationships with the journalists that cover your series. It doesn't have to be, you know, about a headline that you're giving them every time. Just stop and have a chat. If we don't know what your stories are, you can't expect us to come to you and find them out the whole time. So I was chatting with Richard John Neal, the commentator who covers the Ginetta and some of the support races in touring cars about this a little while back, and he was telling me that some of the drivers are going to be complaining about the fact that another driver in the championship, they said, well, you're talking about him all the time. And as Richard pointed out, that was because this particular driver always came to find Richard at the racetrack. He always told him what he'd been up to. He always told him what was going on in his life. So it stood to reason Richard had lots of stories that he could tell about this driver during the course of his commentaries on the racing. So it doesn't have to be at the track either. Get in touch with your local media. You know, you can get in touch with your local newspaper, your local radio station. In this day and age, there's going to be a lot of local media out there. They don't have the budgets that they used to have journalists going out and finding stories all the time. So if you get in touch with them, it's going to be increasing your chances of getting them exposure. You're building relationships with those journalists. There's no point in bombarding them with pages of, and then on lap 2 this happened, and on lap 3 that happened. You know, it's got to be a concise story that you're sending out to them. But yeah, if you've had a win, if you've had a big accident, get in touch with your local media and let them know about it. And as I said earlier on, it doesn't have to be a race-related story. Children in Need, maybe you could take your car down, your racing car, to a local shopping centre and charge people £1 to have a seat in your car, and you collect the money and that goes to Children in Need. That then is a story. You're piggybacking off a national story, but providing a local angle on it. So you can be creative in the kind of stories that you're generating. You know, getting attention can be difficult. There are a lot of sports people out there, there's a lot of news out there, but unless you're actually being proactive, you can't expect the journalists to come to you the whole time. You'll be doing a lot better if you're actually proactive and go out there and engage with the media and build those relationships with the media. So we now come on to the slide I flipped up ages ago, a little bit too early, but social media, that is a fantastic tool. In this day and age, I mean, it's some of you sitting out there, you probably can't imagine a time that social media didn't exist, but trust me, there was one. It's now a brilliant tool for racing drivers, for everybody involved in motorsport who's needing to promote themselves, to get the word out there. You know, more and more people get their entertainment and their information from social media, and it's a fantastic resource for you. Everything that you put out there is the way that you want to present yourself, rather than it coming through the interface of me as a journalist having some kind of impact on how you're perceived. It's exactly how you want to present yourself to the media. It's exactly how you want to present yourself to the fans as well. There are all sorts of different media sites that you can use. So those are the top 10 social media sites in terms of their usage here in the UK in 2018. So just out of interest, how many of you have an account on, say, 2 or more, or have used 2 or more of those different forms of social media? So quite a lot of you, which is good. Pleased to see that, Tom. You know, you would use different types of social media for different things. So in an ideal world, you'd have a voice on several different forms of social media. So obviously, Facebook is the largest, the most popular form of social media. It was largely a sort of an entertainment connection form of social media. Now it's being used more and more from a business perspective as well. But the reason it's the biggest is because it appeals from everybody to 10-year-olds to 85-year-old grannies, whereas something like Instagram, the appeal of Instagram, or the usage of Instagram, the demographic that uses Instagram is much younger. It tends to be the sort of 15 to 25-year-old age group that will use Instagram. So, and as I said, in an ideal world, you'd be using different ones of those different social media. But I think it's really important to think about, what is my social media strategy? A scattergun approach just doesn't work. You really, if you're going to use social media effectively, you have to need a strategy for the way that you're using it. So you want to think about, first and foremost, what am I trying to achieve? Am I just trying to get my name out there, build up a fan base? If that's the case, you're going to go where you're more likely to find fans, to find a wider audience. If you want to use social media to engage with the business community, well, the business community, you're going to find them on LinkedIn. So think about what you're trying to achieve and where you will actually find that audience. Where your audience will be and where they'll actually be hanging out. And also think about, what is the message that you want to convey to them. Is it just promoting yourself, or is there a business message or a sponsorship message that you want to get out there as well? For that, tying into what Tom has talked about, and I'm sure Jess will go on to talk about as well, it's important to have an idea of what your brand is. What is the brand message that you're trying to send out there? So, a few tips and pointers from me. I hope that's been useful for you all. Time now to introduce our final speaker, a lady who knows a thing or two about the media, because Jess has worked for magazines and newspapers, but she's obviously recently been building her own brand as well, Racing Mentor. And so let's bring Jess up now to tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As Louise said, I'm Jess Shanahan, and I'm from Racing Mentor. And today I want to talk to you about what makes you stand out. So how your brand is developing, because obviously racing and sport as a whole is a very crowded market. So motorsport has changed a lot over the last 20 or so years, but I found that a lot of drivers are still stuck in this cycle of sending out blanket emails, talking about tax-efficient advertising and stickers on cars, when actually you need to be taking a slightly more business-focused approach and talking about your value and talking about the business, as Tom said. So it's time for this mindset shift, and you need to stand out for a start, and you need to have a strong brand, but you need to start thinking like a business. So before I go on, because some of you might not know who I am, and because my backstory is kind of relevant to who you are, I want to kind of tell you where I came from. So I started out in marketing and PR, I left a PR agency to go and start my own marketing agency. And because I love cars and I love motorsport, I was like, it makes sense to work in that industry. So I set up this business, and I was working with teams and drivers and automotive businesses. And then I met a group of drivers, and I started my own Porsche team. And we ran in the Porsche Championship on the BRSCC. And this is club racing. And yet we were so well sponsored and so well funded that we had to spend very little of our own money. And I thought this was normal. Because I came from this kind of selling, marketing background, this seemed like the way it should be done. But loads of drivers and team owners were coming up to us saying, how have you done this? How have you got all of this sponsorship for club racing that doesn't have a great deal of TV coverage? And I was like, well, surely it's easy. And I realized that it's not easy. I just had a lot of connections and I knew what I was doing. So I did a little bit of sponsorship acquisition for a few drivers that wanted help, but then realized that I actually needed to help on a wider scale, because this was a problem across motorsport of people, like Tom said, sending out those blanket emails and not really focusing on a business's needs. So 12 months ago at this show, I launched Get Paid to Race, and it's over there if you want to come have a little look through. And this was a book that I wanted to give all of that kind of sponsorship information in just one really easily readable, accessible package. And I've since been doing kind of courses and stuff based on that as well. So I want to ask you this question. Do you know what makes you stand out? Now, if I was doing kind of, a branding seminar or something like that, I'd pick on you and I'd ask you to tell me, but I'm not going to do that today. So all of the drivers around you are competition. And you need to have a strong brand so you're memorable. So when you're talking to people at networking events or at a show like this, they know who you are and they remember who you are. Now, your brand probably will go beyond motorsport, and you actually need to start thinking beyond motorsport, because you probably have a lot in common with other drivers out there, and you don't necessarily want to be saying the same things. So I have a Facebook group called the Racing Mentor Sponsorship Community, and I asked the drivers on there, what makes you stand out? And I got answers like this. I'm the underdog, I'm determined, I'm a championship winner. These are all great traits. But you probably share those with a lot of other drivers, and there was a bit of repetition in those comments of people saying similar things. So you need to think about what makes you stand out beyond that. And this kind of comes into 3 key areas. The first being your interests. Now, your interest could be anything. Obviously, motorsport's going to come into that. But what else? Are you interested in baking? Do you invest in the stock market, run long-distance races? Take time to brainstorm this and write down all of your interests, because it will help tell your story. As Louise was saying, it will help you kind of build that picture of who you are. Now, the next thing is your expertise. So what is it that you are better at than most? Is it racing in the wet? Is it finance? Think about what you're good at and bring that into your brand as well. And next, your achievements. So this could be, obviously, your on-track achievements, wins, etc. But what else? Are you qualified in an interesting area of business? Have you won an award for your work? Have you won an award for something that you've done in the community? Think about those kinds of achievements, but also think about the challenges that you've had to overcome either in your life or in motorsport, because again, this tells a really good story. So all of this can come together to tell everyone kind of who you are. So take some time to brainstorm. So you could be a racing driver who loves to cook, who has made their way up through motorsport by eating a plant-based diet, or paleo, or keto, or whatever it might be. Think about those things that say who you are beyond racing. So another one might be you're an award-winning business person who is connecting people in the construction industry through motorsport. So take time to write down just 1 or 2 sentences that say who you are. And this kind of goes back to what both Tom and Louise were saying. Be social. So these brand statements that you write for yourself, they don't have to be things that you're promoting out there. It's just a way of you understanding what your value is and how you can get that across on social media, in the press, on TV, in the paddock. If you can understand that, that really helps. And on social media, just to add to what they've both said, you need to look beyond motorsport. Of course, talk about the highs and the lows of racing, but talk about the other stuff that you're into. Paint a picture of who you are as a human being, because it'll make you stand out. And it's also important to be consistent on social media as well. So if you can't do all of the social channels, just do one really well. And then you need to find sponsors who fit. So if you're going out and targeting businesses really specifically, you need to do this by looking at your brand, seeing what kind of niches you have. So it might be baking, construction, finance industry, and target businesses that fit with that, because that will help you to find this common ground and provide more value to them. And it is all about the business. As Tom said, you need to go into a business and ask them questions, find out what they need. You're the one that's helping them and not the other way around. And I think one of the things that drivers get wrong is they go to a business going, I would like you to support me because I'm brilliant. And we actually need to stop that, because it means sponsors or potential sponsors are shying away from anyone that messages them about sponsorship, because actually what they want is value. And that brings me to understanding your value. So you have value, you're a marketing tool. So don't go in just asking for money. Think about what the business's goals are through the research that you're doing, and work out how what you can offer will link up with that business. So we're going to answer some questions and stuff from you now, but you're welcome to come see me over there and have a chat if you have any other questions that you think of later on. So thank you very much for listening. I hope this has kind of made you think a bit more about how you can stand out and build your own brands within motorsport.
Thank you very much, Jess. We've got time for a few questions. So anybody, I tell you what, I'll get the ball rolling, and that'll give you an opportunity to think up some questions. Tom, if I could start with you. First of all, when should a driver start their sponsorship search?
So most drivers make the same mistake. They think, I'll win my championship or I'll win my first race, and then off the back of that, I'll be able to show my success and people will want to give me money. It should be approached complete opposite. You should start today if you haven't already started. The big deals, if you want hundreds of thousands of pounds to make it into the top levels of British motorsport, they take a good year, 18 months to come together. There's a lot of different people you need to persuade amongst the whole of the organisation, maybe even across Europe, across America. These things take time, so you cannot start too early, in my opinion.
And then where do you go to find them?
So it's about kind of using, like I said, using that background to research the sponsors. So I would normally start with LinkedIn, but I'd also kind of look at the contacts that I have that might be relevant. And then it's a case of just researching. Look at their website, look at their social channels, all of that kind of thing. But think about, it's easiest to get sponsorship from people that you know and the relationships you've already built. So start there, and then look at kind of using social media or maybe the press to make other connections, or even shows like this.
I guess a lot of drivers who are here today will be looking on either a local or a national level, depending at which level they're competing. But some of the drivers that you work with, well, and yourself as a driver, you kind of operate on an international level as well in terms of sponsors. What's the difference between national and international?
So in terms of sponsorship, the hardest thing to achieve is going from a good national sponsor into a European sponsor. What you've got to think about is, and you've got to plan many years in advance for this, is you've got to think exactly where that company's target market is. If you've got a very, very good English company who only sells product in England, they're unlikely to follow you into Europe. So what you want to do is start targeting European companies or global companies that have a strong British arm that can back you to start. But if you want to move into Europe, then the French, the Swedish, the European companies and organisations could come on board and fund that selection of your racing. I think it's mainly where people fall down, and you'll see a lot, you know, people always aspire to make it to touring cars, and then where do you go afterwards? Or British GT3, and then making the jump into Europe is the hardest thing, and that's where most people fail. And it's all about just planning well in advance and understanding exactly where those businesses are going to want to market their products.
Have we got some questions out there? Hand in the air. Yes, there's a microphone coming to you.
Thank you. It's a question for Tom. Thank you for showing your sponsorship proposal document. I'll get a copy of that if that's all right at some point. But at what point in the process would you send that out? Would that be your first interaction, or would that come further down the line?
Yeah, so the way I go about sponsorship is I'll do my research and I'll find the right person to contact. I'll then find that specific email or address that I can send something through. And then I send a personalised letter to that individual expressing briefly who I am, but mainly about how I believe I can benefit that company specifically. And then I'll send the proposal out at the same time. The proposal isn't to sell sponsorship, the proposal is to give an idea of sports marketing within the motorsport industry, because first you need to sell them on sports marketing in relation, you know, instead of going to TV or media. Then you need to sell them on motorsport as a good solution to that, and then you need to sell them on you. So I try and include just all the relevant information that they need just to get my foot in the door, and that's all it's used for.
Getting them in the beginning is one thing, but I guess if you want to keep a sponsorship, you've got to prove that you're giving value for money. How do you go about telling a sponsor, how would a driver go about letting a sponsor know about the return that they're getting on their investment, Jess?
So I would always go in and have that conversation with the sponsor and ask them the question, what does success look like to you? Because then they're telling you exactly what value that they want from you. So you can say, actually, we can do that in this way or this way, and you know exactly what they want then. And then that can be a measurable thing to take throughout the season. You can say, right, we've hit your goal there. What's next? What will success look like beyond this? And that's a good way that you can hook them for next year as well, because if they tell you that success looks like X new customers, and you say, right, we've got you X new customers, let's shake on a deal for next year, how can they say no?
Some more questions at the front here?
Hi, it's Mara here from Oxford Brooks Racing. We have a lot of students and engineers at our university, and for those who are not financially backed from the beginning, is there hope for drivers who have had a lapse in their racing career? Maybe they started in karting and then they couldn't go further?
Yeah, no, from my experience, I don't think there's any harm in leaving the motorsport industry. Again, it's getting away from believing that you need to be present, you need to be winning to gain sponsorship. If you're not in the industry, you just have more time to search for sponsorship for the next year. My racing takes up an enormous amount of my time. I've got 10 race weekends plus all the BMW commitments, my current sponsorship commitments, and yet I'm still having to search for hundreds of thousands of pounds more for the next year. I think if you're not currently racing, you've got a great opportunity to really create your brand, believe who you are, and go out and spend an entire year or a good length of time finding that money to launch a proper attack, say 2021.
There's actually one of the drivers competing in the British Touring Car Championship this year, Dan Rowbottom, did exactly that. He had a pretty successful junior racing career, but then it just came to full stop because he didn't have the budget. So he went away, he was getting into his working life, but he went away and thought, I want to get back into racing. So he sat down and he put together a plan. It was like a 4-year plan of how he was going to get back into racing. So after a couple of years away, he put that plan into action, built his way up, built his sponsorship profile up, and now is racing in British Touring Car Championship this year, so proof that it can be done.
On that note, Dan actually built his, he built his job around the company he went to find sponsorship off. He's sponsored by Cataclean, and he spends his days as a regular job getting distribution networks for their product. So his proper job away from motorsport is actually working with his sponsor, and that's the best way to activate, is to find a way you can benefit them away from the track, so that all the track action is just a big bonus. You should be selling sponsorship for everything you can offer outside as well.
There was another question down at the front here.
Question for all three of you. Over time, how has media like drivers' attitude towards media training and trying to make a brand for themselves change? And then secondly for Tom, what is the environment like at the moment for trying to get sponsorship? Is it easy? Is it hard?
I think from the media side, and I've seen that the media that I work in has changed dramatically over the time that I've been working in it. So, you know, when I was first with ITV covering the Formula One, we would have audiences of 6, 7, 8 million. I think our biggest audience was, 12 million when Lewis won the championship. You cut forward to Lewis's last championship win, and I think as a live audience on Sky, they had something like 1.2 million. So the audience has scattered. You don't have... There's so many different types of media that people can get there, so many different platforms that people can get their media, get their entertainment from. So it's changed dramatically in that respect. I think from a driver's perspective, it's changed in that they have now to be very proactive at a much younger age. I will often get drivers, the classic driver that people always quote me is Kimi Räikkönen. Oh, Kimi doesn't deal with the media well, Kimi never chats to the media, and everybody loves Kimi, which is quite true. Kimi has created his own successful brand that is very engaging. But as I point out to them, Kimi came into Formula One 20 odd years ago when it was incredibly, it was a lot easier for a driver to jump from F3. He had, 3 seasons of car racing, and then he was in Formula One. Just wouldn't happen in this day and age, or very, very unlikely to happen, apart from anything else from super license regulations. So I think in order to get to a level at which you are going to be on the verge of achieving something, you look at the budgets involved in, if you're going down the single-seater route in F3, F2, astronomical amounts of money. So you've got to start at an earlier age working with the media. And also social media wasn't around back when Kimi first launched his career. It's hugely important these days. So it's become, very important.
I think the change in the media presents so many opportunities for drivers as well, because it might be tough for you to get on the BBC, ITV, whatever it might be, but you can go out and do your own YouTube stuff. And there are so many kind of live streaming services that are now at club races. You could start your own kind of channel. You could do live videos on Facebook. You can kind of put yourself out there, and not only is that a great learning opportunity, so when you do get to a level where you are being interviewed on ITV, that you can talk kind of, you can talk brilliantly about your career, and you already know how to speak to the media because you've already been in front of a camera. And I think that's just using social media in that way is really key for drivers to get themselves out there.
So, on the social media and the media front, it has changed. It's made it easier for us to have a voice, but it's also meant that we're all exactly the same. It's very easy to set up a social media account. I think the biggest problem racing drivers have is they don't focus their social media, they don't put it to their racing, they don't have a separation between personal and racing. I think that's very important, especially when you get into the bigger profile championships where you need that separation. I think on the second note, second question, it's very difficult to find sponsorship. It's not easy at the moment. The current economic climate in this country and across Europe isn't ideal. It's giving a lot of companies a lot of excuses. The good news is when uncertainty becomes an opportunity. So if you're smart enough to follow it, and when it does fall, how it does fall, there'll be companies looking to win market share off one's disadvantaged, and there'll be one's disadvantaged that'll lose. So as long as you target the right companies that are going to look to expand, and they'll have a large amount of cash because they've saved it for the last 3 years, then you can be effective in your sponsorship hunt. So although it does look a bit bleak now, and us fighting for sponsorship for next year, it's not easy. With that means that drivers who take this seriously can gain an unfair advantage over ones that don't.
So our time is up now, I'm afraid. We're going to have to leave it there. But if you'd like to have a conversation with any of us individually, obviously Jess's stand is just over here. Tom, I didn't have time to ask you about your sponsorship seminar that you're running, but if you'd like to find out about that, you can have a chat with Tom on stand.
Or Jen's at the back.
Or Jess, who's at the back with her arm in the air. Sorry, Jess. Jen at the back with her arm in the air. Tom and I both have a stand next door in Hall 1, so you can speak to Tom there if you'd like to find out more about the media training courses that I run. Come and see me next door. But thank you all for coming along, and enjoy the rest of your day.